problem of evil has been a sort of an obvious problem. I mean, God's all good, God's all powerful. How come like gratuitous evil things seem to happen? Of course, you just got to that's sort of the logical problem. You got to conclude, well, if there is this omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent God, then the evil's not gratuitous. It happens for a good reason, you know. And then the question is, well, okay, what is that reason? And then we have theodicies are basically articulating that reason, you know. So, and my favorite is probably the free will defense of Alvin Plantinga and others. I mean, it's not a totally original idea with him, obviously, but he articulated it well. You don't want people to love you unfreely. It'd be easy for God just to program us to love him and to program everybody to go to heaven. But free will is so important. It's so awesome that it's worth having most of humanity just choose the wrong thing and go straight to hell. Imagine you could set it up like this. Like you want him to love you freely, you know, and you give him a choice. You know, you say, well, you love me freely, and if you do, you're going to get everything you possibly want. Now, if you don't, we're going to like abduct you and take you and torture you somewhere for the rest of your life, right? Well, that's kind of like what God is doing. You know, it's like heaven or hell, and it's all based on what you freely choose. So God says, he commands you to love him, actually, but what he's really commanding is that you love him freely. Like you freely choose to love me, or you can freely choose to go straight to hell. You know, and you put that choice between people. You might say, but look, if anybody who could really see that that's their choice, they're going to choose to, you know, God, and they're going to choose to go to heaven, even if it's under like fear of hell, because, you know, that would be the rational thing to do in that case. But you got to understand that free will is so awesome because it allows you to do completely stupid and irrational things in the face of good evidence and good reasons. That's why God likes it. You know, so you're free. You choose to go to hell. Hey, that's your choice. I mean, at least maybe when you're dead, people wonder, like, how can we have a hell, you know, if so bad, wouldn't it better be snuffed out? But maybe you're down there in hell going, hey, at least I got what I chose, you know, at least I have, and God's like, that's right, yeah, I like your freedom, so, you know, I'm at least going to let you keep existing while I'm burning you and demons are sodomizing you and things like that every evening. So imagine that I point this shotgun right at your head, and I'm like, you know, you better vote for Trump, you know, and if you vote for Hillary, I'll blow your head right off, you know. Well, that's still freedom. I mean, you can still freely say, no, I'm not voting for Trump. Blam, you know, but now in the human terms, we might find that outrageous, you know, if people went around doing that. And I mean, some people did in this county, but, you know, and they got in some trouble, you know. I mean, I think they got off, but, you know, they got in some trouble. And it's sort of understandable. But if God is doing it to you, he's aiming his barrel. It is like a double-barreled shotgun. It's like one barrel is full of love, and the other is full of hell and wrath. And it's got two triggers. You see, this is like an old-fashioned one. It's got a couple of triggers. One's like the hell trigger, and one's the heaven trigger. And depending on what you freely choose in that situation, you will get the one trigger or the other. You know what I mean? And that seems outrageous from a human point of view, but then there again, we have to be humble and realize that God knows what he's doing. Well, imagine your son is going to freely, like he's decided to torture the neighboring cats or something. Like, wouldn't you step in and stop him from doing it? Like, wouldn't you abrogate his free will? And maybe, like, in human terms, we'd be like, yeah, that's free will's not that important if it's leading you in that direction. But hey, that's it's important enough to God. It's more important. Maybe free will is more important to Jesus than it is to us.
So, like in the Bible, does God really value free will that much?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I know some people point to passages like where God hardens Pharaoh's heart, doesn't allow the Israelites to leave Egypt, and Romans 9 where it looks like nobody has free will and God's just pulling strings on everybody. But You can't. I mean, you have to look. Theology is a craft. Look, what you got to understand is when God commands something, He is actually commanding freedom. So it looks like He's telling you don't have freedom, but really you do. So because obedience to God's will is freedom, and the founding fathers realized that when they made the Bill of Rights, that they're actually commanding because God is commanding freedom, and so whenever they say you're free to say whatever you want, like now you can say Jehovah, that's actually it's not in the Bible. In fact, the opposite's in the Bible. So I mean, I know what it looks like, because it looks like you don't really have freedom of speech in the Bible. Uh, like you don't have. I mean, I guess you could extend that to freedom of the press. I mean, that's a bit later, but you don't really have a freedom of religion. I mean, I guess that's a big one. It's not like you can find. In fact, you find the opposite, like don't worship any other gods and go and eliminate all the other gods. And even in Christianity, it's not like Jesus said, "Hey, there are many ways," and blah blah. Like all that kind of new agey. No, they're the ones who really believe absurd things. So Jesus didn't say, "Hey, whatever, Buddhism, Hinduism, just all roads lead to me." He said, "No, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father but by me." So that might look like he's not in favor of freedom of religion. And it's true that in Christian centuries in Europe, including on the Catholic Church, you didn't really have a lot of freedom of religion. I mean, it was pretty constrained. And then even in the Protestant Reformation, you take Calvin's Geneva, Calvin was trying people for heresy and so on, like Servetus, putting them to death. Now, you might say, well, it looks like the Bible doesn't really encourage freedom of religion. But you got to think of it more like, well, God wants people to be free to choose. He doesn't want imposed love. So if He doesn't want you don't want to impose it on people. You want them to be free to choose. So maybe you should look at it like that. Really what it means is freedom of religion, freedom of the press, the right to bear arms, for sure. Basically, the founders were basing the Constitution on the Bible, even though it doesn't look like it at first glance. So even though people say, like, Thomas Jefferson and some of the founding fathers were deists, they were kind of done with traditional religion and looking for a more rational approach to theism. And Thomas Jefferson published this kind of the passages of the New Testament that he liked, taking out all the stuff he thought was irrational. So even though they say that some of the time, you really have to look beyond that. So even though some of them were deists, they said really what they meant when they said deist was evangelical Christianity.